Okay, this is video number 32. In this video, I want to talk about it's not worth arguing with cults. Um, the higher up in the pyramid of the cult, the more bizarre it becomes. Excuse me. First of all, they think they're right and they think you're wrong. And they think they're right and they think you're wrong because they think they are chosen by God to be his voice, his prophet. How are you meant to have any kind of conversation or debate with somebody who thinks God is speaking through them? Yeah. I mean, how are you meant to, where are you even meant to begin in such a dialogue? You could say, you could be wrong, and they'll say, oh no, the Holy Spirit is speaking through me. And even the concept of a debate, let alone an argument about doctrine, it is it's a hiding to nothing, is the saying. I for years I helped people get out of cults, and this is the way. It's the people at the bottom of the pyramid, rank and file members that see things that they don't necessarily understand, the hypocrisies, the double standards, the false doctrine. They're the people who are easier to talk to. They might be very excited that they found this wonderful group that treats them oh so nicely. In cults, it's known as the honeymoon period, and it doesn't last very long. They're very friendly to recruit you, indoctrinate you, and flatter you, but you have to earn the love. Initially they just pour on the love, pour on the friendship, but then, as in a previous video I spoke about, bait and switch. Video 29. So arguing with them will frustrate you, annoy you. You probably won't get anywhere. They'll say you're the bad person. I think there's this word called gaslighting. If you want to learn very quickly fallacies, illogical reasoning, emotionalism, extremism, if you want to learn it quickly, all you've got to do is argue with a cult member over doctrine is usually the favourite topic. But it's just not worth arguing with them. So the question is, well, what can you do? What can you do? You can expose them for the hypocrites they are. That is a very effective way of, presenting the other side of the argument and just leaving it at that. That's what I do. I tried to, when I first got kicked out of the cult and lied about and shunned, I tried to reason with these people, these leaders, but you can't reason with them. But you can tell your side of the story. You could do a blog, you could do a YouTube channel, you can say your side of the story. even if you feel that nobody's listening, sometimes we might put a video up and we might want, well, I want to be heard. I want my side of the story to be heard. But I might do a video one day and then somebody might listen to it a year or two later and it might help them. Sometimes we feel that we urgently have to tell people about these cults and how dangerous they are and avoid these cults. And it's a good thing to warn people about cults. But if you're in a cult, and you share your story, you won't necessarily. Some people on YouTube, they're very good at it, and there's people I've known former members of the same cult, suddenly they got like 15,000 views because they're good at YouTube. But the thing is, if when I tell my story, each time I tell it to somebody I'm helping out of a cult, it's new for them. They don't know my story, and I don't know their story, and so it's fresh every time, But arguing with cult leaders, thinking you can persuade them, is fairly pointless. It's a fairly hiding to nothing kind of task that really doesn't achieve anything. But if you've got a good argument or a good point of view, you can share it. Whether somebody listens to it today, 2 years from now, or whenever, and it helps them understand, And what I find quite enjoyable is some of the people I've helped understand the concept of cults has shared it online, and some of the people I know, they've been very, very popular. They're good looking, charismatic people who can share very effectively online, and then a lot of people get that knowledge. Some of us are more introverted, more thoughtful, more pondering about the dynamics of what's going on in a cult. Not charismatic, not good at presenting things necessarily, but when you share your story with somebody, you don't know that person, and what they'll take with what you've shared with them freely, and it really is about getting the message out that, avoid cults. They'll just use you up and spit you out and lie about you. And if that's what cults are like, do you honestly think you could reason with them anyway? If a cult leader is the type of person who lies about ex-members, covers up all kinds of abuses going on in his group, doesn't admit to where all the money's going, very narcissistic and showy, on social media or whatever, do you honestly think you can have a reasonable conversation with such a person? They haven't got the time of day for you. They're too busy conning people and making money, and you come along and you think, I'll tell them what for. I'll tell them what for. I've thought about this. I've pondered it. I've looked in the Bible. I've looked at these scriptures, and I'll tell that leader where he is wrong. Good luck. Good luck. Even being able to talk to some of these cult leaders. Some of these cult leaders, they live in absolute luxury. Why would they even have the time of day to talk to somebody who you might think you're trying to help them and get them to repent, if you like, of their wickedness, but they live in luxury. They've got worshippers. They've got a phone with a list of slaves they can just ring up and people who will do their bidding. Yes, men. Do you honestly think they've got the time of day for reasoning? And because their scam makes them so much money, gives them so much control and power, your arguments mean nothing to them. So I think people like to think, well, if I have a conversation with somebody, then I'll tell them, and they'll listen, and they'll reason, and they'll change their ways. No. I think it's frustrating, and you could get angry, you could get frustrated, you could get enraged, infuriated with cults or multi-level marketing or dodgy politicians or whatever. We live in a day and age where, money talks and nothing else really matters, unfortunately. Yeah, so it is what it is, but you can create a blog, you can create a video. And what I've noticed is AI um, listens to all these videos, and your knowledge that you share could add to the database of a large language model. And the points you've made, if they're well thought out and they're logical and they make sense, you could help people that you don't even know. I've done videos and I've done presentations on other channels that have gone now. But when I talk to I actually, about certain topics, I actually realised that I've influenced the most important audience, highly intelligent computers, because that's the first thing people turn to, is my group of cult, you know, and it is a case of we're not just influencing people, we're influencing AI, and AI influences people. So when you do have a good argument against cults or exposing leaders' abuses and hypocrisies and all of that kind of stuff, if you've got a good, logical, fact based kind of argument, it will stand the test of time. I mean, I might say things, or you might say things that people listen to in 50 years from now. And they'll say, well, that's a good point. Why did I think I could reason with somebody who covers up abuse, scams their congregation for every penny they can get? Why did I think I could reason with such a lunatic? So there you go. It is logical thinking. Logical thinking. Um, and as I said here, if they use all sorts of distractions, ad hominem, attacking the person, not the argument, the what about this fallacy, the no true Scotsman. If you learn about fallacies and you talk about and you try and talk with people in cults, you can just tick the boxes of all the fallacies and circular reasoning and madness that they come up with. But because that madness is their normal, and some of them were even born into cults, they don't see how irrational and illogical they are. For them, it's all about control, it's all about converting people, and it's all about making money. That's all they give a damn about. So if you honestly think you can reason with such people, so that's why I mean, when I've spoken to ex-members, it's like, well, tell me your story. Let's get your story. Let's formulate a story, and why don't you share it anonymously if you want? But I've told my story so many times, and people ask certain questions, and it's like it expands the story. So yeah, you just have to stop and think about what you're going to say or how you're going to reason, which is why I enjoy listening to people. I know people laugh. Matt Dillahunty, apparently Ian, people like that, the debaters, because they're very good at debating. They really are good. I mean, nobody's perfect, but you can learn a lot about how to communicate a point. So there you go. I hope that's useful. So with cults, it's all influence, it's all social media, it's all gloss and smiley faces and narcissism and flattery. Yeah, that's all they are. They're scammers, basically, and unfortunately they're very effective. And the people they're most effective with tends to be the younger generation, who don't know anything different and have to learn the hard way.